How does rose pruning result in much healthier and more productive roses? In this lesson, we're going to talk about the importance of pruning. We're going to be feeding. We're also going to be talking about pest control, talking about specifically rose powdery mildew, as well as other pests that can be plaguing your rose plants. And last but not least, we got a plant to up pot together. We're going to be discussing transplant shock, among other helpful tips when up potting your next plant, whether it goes into another pot or in ground. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and author, saving the world with the home garden. And about 2 months ago, here on the home property, we pruned our iceberg roses. It's a relatively disease resistant, pretty much almost 9 out of 10 months out of the year blooming these beautiful, magnificent white blooms. And it's important to consider also rose care for these pretty hardy rose varieties. And I started pruning my roses a couple months ago and hoping to make an educational lesson as I was doing it. And again, being that it was 2 months ago, I was able to see the differences between those roses that were pruned compared to those that were not. And I want to share with you the importance of how pruning can affect the overall health of not just your roses. This is a good principle to apply to all of your plants and trees on your property. Specifically, if you come in a little closer here, so this row to my right, were all pruned about, again, 2 months ago. And specifically, I pruned them down to about 10 inches, maybe 12 inches off the ground. You can see over here, if I can pull these leaves back, you can see where I made that prune cut right there where I'm pointing. And then from this point up, you can see that this branch flared out. If you go down to the node below it, there's this branch over here that's flared out. And you can see that it's pushed about almost 2 feet of growth. And now we've got all of these buds that are going to result in blooms in the upcoming week or two. If you just check this out as you come down, you'll see that some of these buds are waking up, and these beautiful iceberg white roses are here for the show. The time right now is mid-April, and you can see just how beautiful of a show we're going to have going into April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and November usually, and even December. We've still got blooming roses. And now over here to my right now are the unpruned roses from over a year ago. Last time I pruned these, and the best time for pruning your roses is late January here in our grow zone here in Los Angeles. Our last chance to frost is late January, so going into late January, early February is the ideal time for pruning. And as you can see, these were not pruned since over a year ago, and this is the result of that. Overall, you're probably saying, looks pretty good, right? Got all this beautiful color, tons of buds and blooms happening. But let's take a closer look at what's happening on the inside. So here we are at the base of the plant of the unpruned rose. And one of the reasons for waiting until after the last chance to frost is past your zone is so that there's not more further damages from those cold, sometimes freezing nights, depending on where you're living. Over here, we're not necessarily dealing with freezing, but most of the dieback that's going to happen on a rose is usually going to happen during those winter months. And you can see that there is some death that's happening over here. If you come into the plant as well, you can see again, there's more dead branches. So if you come and take a look at other branches within the tree, you'll see that there's actually dead branches randomly throughout this entire rose bush. And if you allow this to continue remaining here, it's going to be attractive to a lot of pests and beetles that are going to go and attack the dead wood and then work their way into the living wood structure of the plant and affect the overall health and longevity of this rose on your property. And another important reason for pruning your roses is your overall health and actually disease and pest resistance as well. If you take a look at the tips now, you'll notice that there's a ton of powdery mildew affecting these plants. And if the aphids were to discover this plant too, this would be an excellent target, as this plant is in fact a weaker plant compared to those roses on our property that are pruned. One thing is you can see with the first pruned rose is you saw how much growth it's pushing out. If you take a look over here, the growth is in the inches. You can see that it's pushing out just a few inches of growth here and there, but it's not really pushing out those what you would consider long stem rose branches that would be ideal for supporting the most fragrant, the most larger, and at the end of the day, the most healthy roses. And again, these principles that we're talking about apply to a lot of the other plants and trees that you've got on your property. And let me explain to you why these unpruned roses are more susceptible to pest, disease, and at the end of the day, look at all this dieback as well. I'm gonna explain it right now. So when you plant your rose, here's the ground level. You've got your rose plant above the ground, and hopefully you've got roots that are as long, or even ideally, if it's a healthy plant, longer. So you've got a very strong foundation that's supporting an equal to or lesser, smaller above ground structure. Root system larger, plant structure smaller. When we prune, kind of as this image shows, you're cutting back the above ground structure, but you're not pruning the foundation. And that results in a significantly healthier, happier, longer lasting plant on your property when it's got a root system, a foundation that can easily support the above ground structure. And we're not talking about just the flowers and the branches, but also the disease and pest resistance as well. Those roses that are been pruned have significantly less powdery mildew, have less pest issues such as aphids, and are just happier and faster growing and just more productive. The blooms are, healthier looking, and just the overall disease resistance, as you saw the dead wood that's within those structures that are not pruned. So you've got all of this disease that's happening. Let me share with you the reverse. Here's the ground level. If you've got a root system similar to what we said, that's developed and large, just as we saw with the above ground structure, how there can be some dead branches. I'm going to evidence the dead with the color blue. So we saw a dead branch over here on one side. We saw a couple dead branches over here. Just as there's dieback above ground, there's also some dieback below ground. And so your roots, you're not going to be pruning and you're not going to be cleaning up. This is something the plant's going to have to correct on its own. But what's above the ground is easy for us to take care of, to make sure that your plants are going to remain happy and long lasting on your property. And so what you're going to do is remove this dead wood. But you can imagine if we're going to go through another season with dead wood remaining, and now there's going to be new growth coming in and adding to the overall above ground structure, what's eventually going to happen is you're going to end up with a plant that is significantly larger, greater than the root structure, and that's going to result in a very unhappy plant. When you see something on your property that's not growing, not performing well, and so forth, it's probably because you got a root and a foundation that is inferior to the above plant structure. So when it comes to rose pruning, and here we are now going into just past actually mid-April, what we're going to do is create a vase shaped structure. The same principle again applies to most plants and trees that you're growing on your property, but the goal is to keep an open center and make sure that the branches are steered away from the center. That'll help improve aeration, which is the movement of air circulation within the plant. That'll help reduce pest and disease within the plant structure as well, and also increase light penetration, which also decreases pests and disease within the plant and helps improve the overall health and growth of the plant. Since light's getting in there, the plant's going to be able to get that light, which is energy necessary for healthy root development and supporting maximum blooms. And if you've got fruit trees, more fruit. Well, let's get into this bush. And again, you've got the timer on your screen. You can see how fast I'm going to accomplish that open structure, vase structure, in just a matter of minutes. Here we go. We're done. I think it was less than 2 minutes. Maybe it was 3 or 4. Always having fun when I'm spending time in the garden. The timer is going to catch me on the exact time, but just check out the end result. This here is a finished and pruned rose. I know this may look dramatic, but I want you to share. And even though you see some branches here, that's the rose bush behind it, which I'm going to tackle next. You can see there's some weeds here, which is actually from a neighboring palm. And Here, I just found another dead branch in there. We can pull that out and thin this out as well. And I just want you to share with you, within 2 months, this will become this. And some of these are already, as we shared, going to magnificent bloom. All of this in just 2 short months. I think I did the second bush in half the time. The timer will catch the actual truth, but you can see how quickly you can convert your unpruned roses into something that'll perform very well for you for the next 12 months. So I got a message yesterday from one of my friends. I was asking in regards to feeding my roses. Do you wait until they're in bloom? Do I wait until after they bloom? When do I feed my plants? And the answer is feed your plants now. You should be feeding your plants throughout the entire growing season, starting as soon as the last chance of frost is passed, introducing a little bit of fertilizer, increasing your way until you get to May. May seems to be the #1 month for feeding your plants organically to make sure those organic fertilizers break down, readily available by the peak longest day of the year, which is in June, first day of summer. And you want to make sure that your plants have all of the nutrients necessary for maximum health and longevity. That does not just include phosphorus, which is important for flowering, but also nitrogen for growth, potassium for root development and disease resistance. And then the Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizers offer your plants all 6 macronutrients, not just the NPK, but all of the macronutrients plants need in abundance in order for optimal health and longevity and performance. The Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizers have nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. In addition to the 3 macronutrients of NPK, the Ivory Organic all-purpose fertilizers have all 6 plant macronutrients, which include the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, in addition to magnesium, which is the heart of the chlorophyll molecule, sulfur, important for metabolic processes within the plant and greening, and last but not least is calcium, which is in the cell wall of all the plants. By having all 6 macronutrients in the soil, you can ensure your plants have all of the nutrients necessary for optimal performance. And if you take a look here at this chart, so what this chart here shows is the fertilizer amount or quantity. In winter, you're applying low dose, and in spring, you're adding a little more, peaking in the month of May. And again, the reason is specifically with organic fertilizer, you want those to break down, be readily available in the soil by summer. And then here's F for fall, and then back into winter. The most important seasons for feeding your plants: spring, summer, or May, and fall. So lower amounts in early fall, maximum recommended dose from the fertilizer package in May, and then wherever spring is for you, and it's different depending on the grow zone that you live in. Here in Los Angeles, spring for us really starts at the end of January, early February, whereas for you, spring might not be until April or May. The test for starting your feeding of your plants is after the last chance of frost has passed your grow zone, and I'll put a link for determining your grow zone by simply putting in your zip code into that link I'll put below in the video description. And what we're gonna do now is just simply add a few tablespoons of fertilizer. And as we explained in the chart, you're gonna be doing this at least 3 times a year. And I like adding a little less and just doing it about every month or every other month, like the first week of every month or the first week of every other month. And what this is gonna do is, being that it's an organic fertilizer, is it's gonna break down, work its way into the soil, feed the earthworms, feed the beneficial bacteria, feed the mycorrhiza, that entire living network that's below the soil. If you're doing things inorganically, you're using a synthetic fertilizer, a chemical fertilizer, what is the difference is that it may be harming the soil biology, and the salts that are also in those synthetic fertilizers may be damaging also the soil biology, which at the end of the day is gonna end up harming your plant as well. As you can see, we put that right on top of our wood chips. We're simply going to use our hand tool now and get the fertilizer in contact to the topsoil, like so. And before I water, you may notice there's quite a bit of weeds. Specifically, these are the seeds of a palm known as the Mexican or Washington fan palm from a neighboring tree. We get hundreds of these a year, in addition to other weeds such as this here in front of me. But you'll notice that weeding, when you in fact mulch around your plants, is cake. So simple compared to if you're pulling these out of the soil. You can see the entire structure comes right out of the ground. The roots, you can see I can do this all day long. The additional thing, by mulching around your plants, and here's some more wood chips that we're gonna be adding. We're adding a good 1 to 3 inch layer of wood chips around each of the plants. What that's gonna do is several things to benefit your plant. One is it's gonna reduce weeding by as much as 50 and even as much as 75+%. Additionally, when you go to watering, it's gonna help the plant retain moisture. In the summer, it's gonna keep the soil cooler. In the winter, just the opposite. It's gonna keep the soil warmer. Those are just a few of the very important benefits of mulching around your plants. And now as soon as we go to water, the fertilizer is gonna begin working. One important thing I wanna share with you here, the Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizers offer your plants all 6 macronutrients. There's this premium blend fertilizer, which has a lower NPK indicated by the 222. The Super Blend has a higher NPK indicated by the 333 plus. It's got azomite, and the benefit of azomite is volcanic crushed rock, which offers your plants a lot of the micronutrients important for also important health plant performance. So Ivory Organic has a special going on starting May 1st of 2022, and while supplies last, on the Trio gift boxes. When you take a look and open these up, this here's the yellow Trio. As it used, as the name implies, you get 3 things. You get the Super Blend plus azomite fertilizer, which has all 6 macronutrients in it. You get a pint-sized can of the protection against damaging summer sunburn, insects, and rodents. Depending on how much water you add to this, you can use this as a foliar spray, as a tree paint, as well as a tree paste with less water. And then you get the ready-to-use spray bottle as well. In the month of May, and again, while supplies last, we're also including a second bag of fertilizer. As we know, May is the most important month for organically feeding your fertilizer. We've got these extra bags from the expired lot. We're including this as a free gift. Again, the NPK, MGSCA do not expire, and you get an extra bag of fertilizer. The difference again being this one here does not have the OMRI certification on it compared to the 2022 and late 2021 labels that actually have that OMRI certification on there. The blue Trio label is the oil-free version of the can. This here's the blue label. Again, oil-free whitewash protection. Also comes with the same ready-to-use spray bottle that you'd find in the yellow Trio, but the fertilizer is just a lower NPK and does not have the plus azomite. Also OMRI certified for organic gardening, does contain all 6 macronutrients. And again, while supplies last, from our expired lot, we're including a second bag for free. This here is about a $15 additional value, whereas the yellow Trio is about a $30 additional value. So we just pruned the rows, again, mid-April. Light hours are only going up, temperatures only going up. Now the risk of sunburn to the plant goes up too. We've shown over the years that even roses can suffer sunburn. Pretty much everything is susceptible to sunburn. Just as people can burn, so can plants. And it's important to protect your plants from the effects of damaging not just first, but also second and third degree sunburns. Third degree sunburns are sunburns that penetrate the bark, damaging the underlying cambium, and you'll notice that the bark will slip right off the tree, or at least be completely exposed and open to the effects of beetles and termites. There's an agricultural expert I met with a few months ago, and he said, what's the big deal if one side of the plant burns? I'm like, you've now just got an opening that's now open to pests and disease on one side of the plant. So even though the plant can continue to thrive off of the side of the plant that's not exposed to the sun, which is going to be the north and northeast side of the plant compared to the south and southwest side of the plant that gets the full-on sun exposure throughout the day or until the tree grows a canopy to protect itself, it's important to whitewash the tree and protect it from the effects of, again, that first, second, and third degree sunburn. So today we're going to be whitewashing our roses using the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard. It offers your plant protection against damaging summer sunburn and insects and rodents. As you can see here, the first one for use on your roses, but also fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs for use in organic production and healthier than if you're to use latex and tar-based products. As latex and tar are designed to last 100 years or more. You paint your house, paint stays on your house for 100 years. And when it does eventually slough off, as again, if you put on your plants within a year, it's going to be in your garden soil for a very long time. And this product is OMRI listed for organic use. And I want to emphasize the fact that the active ingredients in here, check out all of these oils: castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. And then also in the inert ingredients. So again, the oils are insect and also disease repellent property oils. The inert ingredients, if you take a look here with diatomaceous earth, diatomaceous earth is also another pest repellent product. It will basically help to deter pests such as termites and beetles from penetrating within the plant, or even aphids from chewing on your plant, grasshoppers and so forth, by putting these products on your plants. And again, one other big difference compared to using latex and tar or rose prune sealers, which are like tar based, is that they trap moisture. And if you trap moisture on these prune surfaces, it's going to result in the wood rotting, compared to this product dries on the plants porously, allowing the exchange of moisture and nutrients. So if you go to foliar feed a plant that's been protected, as we're going to demonstrate shortly, you can actually foliar feed right through this product once it dries onto your plants. Another thing I want to share with you, if you take a look at the chart here, so you can see the benefits of using the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard, is if you take a look here, you can see it can help with cloning and transplanting as an anti-transparent, reduces transplant shock, seals pruned surfaces, curb weather extreme, both summer sunburn, winter sun scald, and windburn, total plant protection of your leaves, stems, and trunks. As a rodent repellent, what ingredients? Specifically, castor, spearmint, peppermint, rosemary oil, garlic oil for your insect repellent, aphids, ants, beetles, borers, caterpillars, slugs, termites, whiteflies, antifungal properties with garlic oil, cinnamon oil, ants, termites, antifungal as well, clove oil, termite, scale, thrips, whiteflies, mites, peppermint oil benefits, ants, beetles, cockroach, flies, moth, mosquitoes, and rodent repellent benefits, rosemary oil specific, mosquitoes, flies, and fleas, diatomaceous earth, insect repellent, and oil absorbent. And I'll explain that once we go to brushing the products on. Once the powder starts mixing into the water, I'll add some more water to the can to get a good brush on. If you add less water, it'll become a tree paste. This one can make about 22 to 25 ready-to-use spray bottles that you can spray on the entire plant structure. And I want to just quickly demonstrate, if you spray this on the plant leaves, let me just make sure it's stirred up. If you spray it on the plant leaves, you can take a look. It looks like this dilute milk protection. And again, this is serving to the plant as an anti-transparent, helps with transplant shock, and will keep pests from chewing on those leaves. Again, with the oils as well as diatomaceous earth within the product. But on the stems, even though it's offering some protection, it's a little thin. It's more ideal as a total plant protection, or if you're trying to cover just smaller plants where it'd be harder to do what I'm about to perform as a whitewash onto the trunk and branches of this rose bush. So here we go. We've now got a solution that we can now brush onto the tree, and here we go. And now notice, prune branches over here, we're now going to seal it. That's going to help keep, there's also rose borer beetles. That'll help keep them out. If any of them do penetrate, they're going to get injured on the way out and have a very short life for having messed with your protected rose bushes. Again, we can see all this green growth back here. We're going to protect that as well, like so. And we're also going to coat the prune surfaces as well. So we're about halfway done whitewashing this rose bush, and maybe you don't want a white looking rose. Keep in mind, within a month or two, bush is going to grow out, and it's going to end up being one of these bushy structures, and the lower tree trunk and branches are going to be pretty much hidden. However, white naturally reflects the most light, and with that, the most heat off your plant. But it doesn't necessarily have to be white. Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard also offers colors: brown, green, gray, and greige, so you can better match and get the aesthetic value that you want, so your plant in fact doesn't look whitewashed, and you can actually do something that just kind of blends in with your landscape a little bit more. So instead, what I'm gonna do is use the Ivory Organics now colored green, so you can compare the two colors. And again, just bear in mind, there's other color alternatives, and a lot of, again, one of the number one questions I get is which one's better. As I just said, white naturally reflects the most light and heat. So if again, The look doesn't matter as much. White is the way to go. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit more aesthetic for your garden environment, any color is gonna offer protection, just like wearing a shirt. Even if I'm wearing black, it's gonna absorb heat, but it's still gonna protect the underlying skin, which would be the equivalent of the trunk on a plant. Well, let's get started. So depending on the amount of water you add to it, you can have it a little bit more of a watery solution. You can have a little bit more of a thicker solution closer to paint, or even a tree paste if you want something thicker like tar. You can accomplish that by just adding less water. What's happening now is we're brushing on, and that powder is encapsulating all of those oils that we put, offering your plant several months of protection now from pests. And that diatomaceous earth is incorporated into that brush on solution. That's going to offer your plant a lot of protection from pests as well. And I know, again, another question is, can I just do one side? You can see the sunny side of the branches over here. The back side will always be in the shade. That's just a fact of living in the northern hemisphere, is that the sun is only on the south and southwest side of the plant. The north and northeast side is always in the shade. If you're near the equator, then the sun would be more central over the plant, and the light exposure on the plant would be more uniform all the way around. So when I apply it to the plants, I like going all the way around to protect the entire plant structure. So another very important question I get is, when brushing on the product on the stems, is this gonna obstruct and prevent the buds from pushing out branches? And the answer is no. Again, the product is porous, and the buds and the branches will grow right through all of these coated surfaces. So again, it will not obstruct the buds from pushing out and creating the future branches on this rose bush. And here we go. This is gonna be the last branch that we've got to coat. And we are done. Again, I don't typically paint my rose bushes with two different colors, but for demonstration purposes, here's a rose bush coated in colors, white and green. And you can take a look at a citrus tree that I did for demonstration purposes that's coated in colors white, brown, green, gray, and greige, so you can see the choices and what can be accomplished. And this here is the Purple Splash Climbing Rose that we've attached to our gazebo here in the backyard orchard to offer some color. And the lesson and the tip we're sharing now is on pest and disease control. And specifically, right here where I've got it tagged, I found one pest, one aphid. And aphids seem to be the #1 pest that plague roses, among also rose beetles that'll penetrate the canes that are left exposed and open, which we already discussed how to care for that using the Ivory Organics brush on solution. But when it comes to aphids that are plaguing the leaves and the new tender growth and the rose buds of your plants, if there's just 1 or 2 or 5 or even 10, and you see that the overall health and the performance of your plant is good, the best thing to do, and especially if you're an organic gardener, is to do nothing. And the reason is that an organic garden should have a balance of pests and predators. And the predators that you have in your backyard orchard that should be naturally existing are ladybugs, praying mantis, spiders, and even birds, to name a few. So the goal by having pests in your property, I was able to identify one, and hopefully there's more, you're gonna be able to feed the beneficial things that are also hopefully thriving on your property, which include the ladybugs, praying mantis, and so much more. If the plant is struggling for help, then it's important to offer care. And there's organic ways. And the first one being is to use the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard, which again, the diatomaceous earth will help repel aphids and get them off your plant. The oils within it, specifically the garlic, among other oils, offer insect repellent protection. The number one question I get now relating to insects is what's going to happen to the bees? And the answer to that is simply make sure you apply the products in the early morning hours or in the late afternoon hours, but while the humidity is still low, because usually, especially here in Southern California, and I know across the country as well, in the evening hours, humidity sometimes increases. You're gonna wanna make sure you apply the product and allow about 10 to 20 minutes for the product to dry on before the evening humidity sets in. And that'll offer your plants protection for about 6 to 9 months, depending on the moisture in your area. So I'm using now this spray bottle tank that we used last for making our foliar nutritional spray using the Ivory Organics tea bag. Foliar feeding your plants in the winter months when the soil conditions are cool and the root uptake of nutrients is poor. Foliar feeding is a way to make sure your plants have all of the nutrients necessary for optimal plant growth and performance come spring. It also helps keep your plants green and thriving and looking their best during the winter months. Foliar feeding can also still be practiced throughout the year, but the importance, in my personal opinion, is predominantly as a winter measure to make sure your plants have all of the necessary components. And there's a few lessons demonstrating the Ivory Organics tea bag products specifically for making sure you're foliar feeding your plants and getting the nutrients to your plants that way. We're going to be using the tank sprayer next to now treat and care for the issue of powdery mildew that's on the rose buds and some of the stems and even on some of the leaves. This is an issue commonly in the early part of the season when the temperatures are still cool, moisture is still high, you're watering your plants and that moisture is staying on your roses a little bit longer than they typically would come summer and even early fall. And you're gonna notice the powdery mildew kind of peaking now. Another reason for powdery mildew to be peaking in your plants is also, again, maybe due to your pruning practices, because again, a plant that has good root development and structure will have less pests and disease, powdery mildew being that disease. What we're gonna do now to keep the powdery mildew under control is we're gonna use a product known as neem oil. And what's so cool about neem oil, aside from powdery mildew, is it helps also with pests in the sense that it, just as any other oil or mineral oil that's used as a horticultural oil in gardening, is it smothers the pests, as the exoskeleton of most of these pests are a way for the insect to breathe. By smothering them with oil, they suffocate and die. What neem oil does, in addition to smothering the pests, is if they ingest the neem oil that's on the plant parts for several days after application, they end up getting a stomach ache that also shortens their lives. So that's two ways of attacking pests on plants using neem oil. And the cool thing is you can, and I get this question a ton as well, there's 7 natural oils in the 3-in-1 Plant Guard. You can add some neem oil to it to add the additional benefits of neem as well. But today, all I'm going to be doing is adding some of this neem solution to, I've got about half of this tank filled with water, and we're simply gonna add, and you can see the neem, I'm adding about a tablespoon or 2 of solution to a gallon of water. This gallon size does not have instructions for pest control and powdery mildew. If you are buying neem oil from over the counter, do follow the instructions to make sure that you're complying with the manufacturer's suggestion in regards to how to use it. And all we're gonna do is shake it well and now start applying it to the powdery mildew locations on the plant. So I've tagged 2 locations here on our property with roses that have powdery mildew. And when you take a look, what I want to share with you is the 1 hour as well as the 24-hour update of the mildew that's on the roses. And what we're gonna do is simply spray it with our water/neem solution. I'm spraying the top and the bottom of all of the leaves all over the plant structure. Even though the powdery mildew is only in one location and most of the rest of the structure is in relatively good condition, you're supposed to spray the entire structure to keep the mold, which is the mildew, under control. So we're simply going to spray the top part of the plant and the bottom part. And we're just going to simply spot treat those buds that have powdery mildew. And then we're going to revisit it, like I said, in about an hour. And again, in 24 hours, I'm going to show you how fast the solution is going to get this problem under control. And this here with the green tag is the second zone with powdery mildew that I want to show the before and afters. We're simply going to spray again the top and the bottom of the structure and revisit it in an hour and again in 24 hours so you can see how fast we get this problem under control. These roses, by the way, have never been pruned, and I want to show you how much more pests and disease is going on here than in my pruned roses. If you're coming a little closer, just check this out. So again, you can see buds here in the light with the powdery mildew. Check out the leaves. Check out these leaves. Just covered in this white mold, which again, the neem oil, as well as a lot of the oils as we explained in the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard, specifically cinnamon and garlic, are also antifungal. So those oils, when applied to the plant, can offer you plant protection. Or again, when you're brushing it onto, tree wounds, grafting wounds, and so forth, it's offering this antifungal benefits in addition to pests. Let's continue spraying. I'm gonna have to spray this entire structure. Or the other thing is, when I've got the time, hopefully in the upcoming week or two, all this is coming down as well. I want to prune these. I want to get a structure, as we explained on that chart, a structure where the root zone is larger, more established, and can support a bigger structure so that it continues to remain disease and pest resistant throughout the next 12 months. Until I do get to pruning them, however, I'm going to spray it. This structure, I'm going to have to spray the entire cluster of plants, as the powdery mildew is everywhere on these unpruned for, uncared for roses. However good they look, these are definitely susceptible to more disease and pests. So I'm going to quickly demonstrate how the Ivory Organic oils, just simply using the oils, can be used as a pest control and mildew control solution on your roses as well. And when you go to Ivory Organics, you'll see that there's the whitewash, which is the oil-free option, and then this here is the 3-in-1 plant guard, the yellow label, which includes the 7 natural oils, again, which include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. And you have the option to also buy them individually in the zero waste program, or Save the Planet with Ivory Organics, where you can actually buy the parts without getting the can at a discounted price. But what we're going to do here today is I'm simply going to take the oils, which comes in this bubble wrap package, and we're going to add it to a bottle of water, and it includes 1 drop of organic soap. And I can just use to about a 23-ounce bottle, about a quarter of this, or a gallon of water with the entire vial. You can see I barely used it. I'll add a little bit more. So it's going to be about a quarter. Now I'm close to like half. But again, about 1 of these would be equivalent to a little more than a tablespoon, which you can add to a gallon of water. And so this here is going to be a little bit more of a concentrated solution. And we're going to shake it. Well, you don't need soap if you don't have organic soap, but the organic soap is going to help with the emulsification of the oils into the water. Take a look at that. You can see the color's actually changed. And now we've got a solution organically that can be used to keep pests and mildew at bay. So this came out to be a pretty nice fit. I just took simply the spray head off the Ivory Organic ready-to-use spray bottle, and it fits beautifully on the, I don't really want to advertise this, but the Fuji water bottle that we're basically reusing to now create our own fungicide and insect control spray that we can now spray. Let's focus again one more time on the mildew. Coming as close as you can. Let's spray it. Revisit in an hour. And again, for several days, you're going to notice the powdery mildew is going to continue to subside. We're just adding a nice generous coat all the way around the leaves and stems. You may notice I don't have any gloves on, as the product is completely organic. Unless you're allergic to soap or one of the oils in the ingredients, there's, again, this is one of the healthiest ways to control pests and mildew in your garden. One final tip on rose care. I know it's springtime. A lot of you guys are buying new roses, and I just want to share a few helpful tips. Whether you're potting your new roses into a new pot, or if you're planting them in ground, here's a few helpful tips. My first tip when selecting a container, make sure it's got holes. This container here has 3 holes. If it wasn't ceramic, I would probably add a couple more just to make sure that when you go to watering, that the water can quickly escape, as you're gonna wanna make sure that your plant doesn't drown every time you go to watering your plant. You're gonna wanna make sure, just as your in-ground plantings as well, you wanna make sure the water flows and passes through with each watering. The next thing you're gonna wanna do is add some gravel. So if you take a look here, you can see it consists of some rocks, some clay ceramic pieces, and some gravel. What we're gonna do is simply add it to the base of your pot, like so. And that's just simply covering the bottom about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. That's also gonna help make sure that your potting mix doesn't go through the container. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna add a potting mix. A lot of people make the mistake of using native soil, and native soil isn't designed for retaining the moisture in your potted mix for a long enough time between watering. Native soil simply dries out too quickly, whereas the potting soil helps to retain moisture. One of the biggest mistakes I see again is people buying potting mixes and using it for their in-ground plantings, which again retains too much moisture if it's going in your ground. Potting mixes are for pots, not for your in-ground plantings. We're now gonna add this potting mix to our container. So we've just added some potting mix to the bottom of the container. We're gonna add a little bit of pressure to remove any air from possibly drying out that lower zone. We're now gonna take our potted plant and we're gonna pull it from the container and just check out how well and beautiful that root structure system is. You can see it's completely filled in the pot. We're always inspecting the bottom to make sure that there aren't any coiled roots, because if they're in coiled position now, they'll remain coiled for the entire life of the plant. What you're gonna wanna do is remove that bottom 5 to 10% cluster of roots, just simply pruning them out like so. And that's gonna help encourage the rest of these roots to continue growing and searching and filling out the rest of the pot that it's gonna go into. And now we can simply secure it into the container. And now we're gonna add some soil around the edges. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna feed it the Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizer. Just gonna take a tablespoon of the product here, or 2. Just gonna add it to the topsoil. As soon as we water, it's gonna begin working. Just so you can see the consistency of the product. Basically a slow release fertilizer. So we mentioned earlier that it's important to feed your plants at least 3 times a year: spring, summer, and fall. Just in general, obviously May being the most important month of the year. When it comes to your potted plants, it's important to feed your plants every 30 days. The answer is why? The reason is every time you go to watering your potted plants, those minerals and nutrients that you've just added are beginning to leach out. So if it were in ground, the soil is gonna better be able to retain the fertilizer that you're offering your plants. To help the plant better retain those nutrients that we've just added, I like using a saucer like so. And when it comes to watering, that nutrient-rich water will remain around the plant for the next only about a day. If that saucer remains wet after a day, I'd recommend that you take the plant out of the saucer, use that nutrient-rich water to water another plant, because there's definitely a lot of that NPK, MgSCA that's in the water solution. So I wouldn't just dispose of it. The other thing too, and you can just imagine if you're hosing a compost pile with water, there's gonna be parts of that compost that are still dry. By keeping that saucer around the plant, it's gonna help the soil uptake, all of that water, make sure that root zone stays wet. And bear in mind, it's just the bottom 5 or 10% of the pot that's basically still underwater. You're not gonna want it to stay wet from day after day after day. I'm talking about within 24 hours, if that saucer still contains water, dispose of it so that the soil doesn't begin rotting as well, because that soil and that root system will wick it up and it'll be too much water, leading to a phenomenon known as root rot and other disease that will basically inhibit the soil area and the soil medium. So it's important, again, to allow the soil between waterings to get dry, never bone dry, but it's a good practice to kind of gauge that. And from season to season, it's a different amount of water. In the summer, you may need to water about every other day. Compared to spring, maybe once a week may be enough. So again, gauge it based on understanding your plant. You may want to use a water meter as well in the soil to kind of get a better understanding of what's happening within the soil medium as well. But using a saucer, I find, is a great technique. to making sure that your plants stay hydrated on the day that you're watering it. Just make sure, again, for the second or third time, that that saucer doesn't continuously remain wet from day to day to day and week to week to week. And just making sure that you empty out that saucer after that second day if there's still water remaining. Again, just as we explained with the in-ground roses, for your potted roses, we're gonna take some wood chips and add it to the top zone of the plant. And by adding wood chips, in addition to helping the plant retain moisture, it's also going to help suppress any weeds from sprouting, in addition to just keeping the overall plant cooler during the hotter months and also warmer during the coolest months. So the last thing we're gonna do now that we've up-potted our plant, again, whether it goes in a pot or in the ground, is we're now going to whitewash the entire structure. This is where the brush on doesn't really apply. There's too much plant to cover, too many leaves, too many branches. There's no way of really getting a brush into here. And again, you don't wanna put a thick coat other than on the tree trunk and lower branches. Or again, those branches that are, getting too much sun. This is where a light protection is the best way to go. It's gonna help with transplant shock. It's gonna help also this newly planted plant combat pests and disease, as well as this initial few days, the initial few weeks is when the plant is most prone to disease and pests as well. So what we're gonna do is now protect the entire plant structure using the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard, ready to use spray. Again, protection against damaging summer sunburn insects and rodents. And we're simply going to spray the entire structure like so, even those buds. And now you've just whitewashed the entire plant structure. We've just covered a ton of stuff. I hope you found it all enjoyable and informative. And if so, be sure to give us that thumbs up. And most importantly, share us with your gardening friends and family. As always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.